Amanda?
I've been there for
We couldn't believe we were saying that either.
Thank you.
That's why.
you can see what kind of residency it's been for me. Oh God. Yes. Everyone's cell phone set on stun.
Stun?
Okay.
What is that?
All right. Then let's go. Our first Jacaranda of the evening is Nehemiah Harvey.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to say a few thank yous. I'd like to thank my project period mentors, Dodie Bellamy, Victoria Patterson, and Alma Villanueva. And I'd also like to thank my current workshop mentor, Ms. Tananary Du. She gave me a lot of insight a couple of days ago that really helped shape my prologue to my piece. And so with that being said, the title of my piece is it's a part of a novel. It's titled The Catalyst, and it is dedicated to Granny and Reggie Jr., my angels. Prologue, March 30th, 1926. Command, we're in position. Lieutenant whispered into a bulky rust-colored box. The night air was cold as we waited for word back from command. We stood, us six, in a small trench forged earlier during the Sovereign War. The trench rested roughly 1 mile from the point of interest, a small shack. My chest heaved, filling my lungs with dark, dank anticipation. Puff clouds lingered around my nose before crystallizing and falling to the earth. There we stood, some of the few finest killers still alive, after the war against Mantherials had left much of the world in desolation. What we lacked in formal military training, we made up for in ruthlessness and general disregard for Mantherial life. That's what I told myself to feel better about our odds of surviving the encounter. The search for the last Mantherial had led coalition forces here to what was left of Moscow, Russia. Copy, Lieutenant, the box buzzed back, barely decipherable because of the static. Do you have the target in sight? We believe the target is in a rundown shack 1 mile north of us. We have a visual, Lieutenant responded. Permission to proceed. Permission granted. Proceed with deadly force. We assembled. We knew what needed to be done. Lieutenant stayed behind, looking from the trench through binoculars. We moved in formation, the 5 of us. Our all-black uniforms blended perfectly with the dead night. There was only dirt beneath our feet, yielding our steps silent underneath us. The tiny house was bare. It had 4 walls, 2 doors, and 2 windows, a perfect square. The wood was old and had been eaten by termites, then re-eaten by escaped fire embers from neighboring explosions. The charred marks looked like ancient hieroglyphs foretelling of the massacre at hand. 2 soldiers took the front door. 1 soldier manned the left wall window, and another manned the right wall window. I crouched at the back door. Seconds stretched out over the span of an eternity passed while we waited. Then they charged. I followed suit. The front door had been knocked off the hinges, accompanied by glass shards that had flown every which way. My door was the least damaged and maintained its attachment to the wall. We drew our guns. A small frame target sat in the center of the room, its back to me. Its feet were elevated on another chair. It was sweating profusely. A pool of clear fluid covered the floor underneath it. It's a woman, one of the front door soldiers called out, and she's pregnant. No one moved. All of us kept our trigger fingers ready, with our weapons pointed at the pregnant woman. If you're here to kill me, do it now, she urged between strained breathing. She was in labor. Surrender peacefully, and we may be able to spare you and the child, replied the other front door soldier. We both know there will be no mercy for me or the baby. She was right. My eyes stung. The woman screamed from a contraction. She's going to deliver the baby any minute. What do we do? Asked the soldier that had come through the right window. Let's get the baby out, then go from there. Front door number 1 reasoned. Thank you, the woman managed before screaming again. 4 of us dropped our weapons. This is a monster. We have to neutralize the threat, reiterated left window. He shot. The woman was quick, leaning her chair to balance on 1 leg so that the blast that would have destroyed her skull only nicked her shoulder. Instead of screaming, she called. The hair on her arm stood and melded into small metallic feathers. She lunged at the soldier who had taken the shot and severed his head severed his head from his body before he had time to pull the trigger again. His body remained erect for a second before it fell in a heap. She stood over the corpse, stomach in hand, breathing hard through her nose. Another contraction. The whine of our loading weapons brought her back to reality. Right window spoke. You're under arrest in the name of the United World Collaborative. Drop your weapons. The woman looked from side to side at her arms. The metal feathers were sharp as daggers. Leave me alone and I'll spare you, she bargained. Come quietly and the UWC will show you mercy. Front door number 2 spoke, knowing the orders we'd received from command. You lie. Her face hardened. A feral look entered her eyes, her maternal instinct to protect her child taken over. She moved with unreal agility despite her present load. She circled the room, weaving seamlessly through the blast unscathed. Right window fell. The bottom portion of his legs separated at the knees. I stepped back until the wall behind me prevented any further movement. I charged my weapon. The 2 remaining soldiers continued their relentless fire. With a graceful flap of her arms, the woman rose in the air, eclipsing the single source of light hanging from the ceiling. Time stilled while she floated, a warrior angel hovering over our heads. The light reflected from her metal arms cast a spectral show on the bare walls. Every color from the rainbow danced around the room. She was beautiful as she maneuvered into a spiraling swan dive, arms extended. The 2 front door soldiers were in direct range of her sharp arms. She landed somehow on her feet, surrounded by a pile of soldiers. She huffed, trying to catch her breath, overwhelmed by the physical strain. Her pain distracted her. She'd forgotten about me. Barely able to lift my arms for the intense beating of my heart, I fired. This time, the blast tore through her flesh. A hole replaced the back of her right shoulder blade. I could see straight through. No time to lament in pain, she swiveled on her right heel to face me and launched herself through the air. I ducked and lifted my weapon in defense to her one good arm. My firearm fell, 2 pieces on the floor. Her right arm hung limp while she drew her left one back to strike again. Her attack was calculated, sure, deadly. Her arm was a blur. I reacted. Her eyes grew wide with understanding as she lay on her back on the cold floor, with my knee to her neck. I too was fast. She lay flat on the floor except for her legs that rested in the position of pyramids. I truly am sorry, miss, but it has to be this way. My mind surged. I knew my mission stemmed deeper than the Cold Legion assignment, yet I couldn't bring myself to kill the woman who was no different than me. An insidious voice rose in my conscience, urging me to do it, do it, do it. I grabbed my head, my knee digging deeper into her neck. She struggled for air, her face contorted. Maybe I would kill her while struggling for my own sanity. That way she'd be an unavoidable casualty of war, freeing me from guilt. Her face turned scarlet, then relaxed. The sounds of a crying baby filled the room and drowned out the insidious voice. The sickening smell of new life brought clarity to my clouded judgment. I was weak. I moved quickly to examine the baby, still connected to its mother. She breathed in air as greedily as he did. I lifted him easily and felt the flow of energy passing through his blood. It's a boy, I announced. The mother turned her head and closed her eyes tight. Ma'am, I'm not going to hurt you, I started. I couldn't finish, however. Lieutenant stormed through the open front door of the house then, weapon ablaze. What's going on here, he demanded. I was caught. Sir, she was in labor. I took her down, but while I had her pinned, she delivered. I held the dirty baby up to the lieutenant, stretching the mother's cord further. Lieutenant's eyes showed grief. The mother stirred, looking to her child, but was met with a lower powered blast from the lieutenant's gun. Son, the mission was to neutralize the enemy threat. He rationalized. Give me the baby. I wanted to say no. My body grew cold as all of my heat made its way to my right hand. The baby shivered. I cradled him tight in my left forearm. I would only be an icebox for a moment. The voice returned, more forceful this time, but the same message as before. Do it. My body was warm again. My right hand burned as I allowed Lieutenant to take the baby. Now walk away, Lieutenant told me. I did as I was told. I walked less than 30 yards when I heard the high-powered blasts. There were 5 total. I turned back towards the shack. The temperature of the air around me plummeted. I was ice. My hands were still smoking when I reached the trench. Command, all threats have been neutralized, I spoke into the box. Repeat last transmission, the static box replied. I repeat, all threats have been neutralized. The last material is dead. Roger that. Chapter 1, today, March 29th, 2016. Some days are intended solely for relaxation. The universe is absolutely balanced, the stars perfectly aligned, the weather ideally tempered for lounging. These days, purpose for whatever form of loafing one could imagine. Today was one of those days. I lay staring at the ceiling, angry that I would not have the luxury of enjoying such a day. Any minute, my alarm would go off, and my best friend would knock on my door to wake me for my morning class. Like clockwork, the two events happened. I sat on the edge of my bed after showering, debating on what to wear. I was a sophomore in college now, so it no longer mattered to be runway fashionable. However, it was still important to maintain some level of dressing standard due to my status on the football team. I decided on a pair of vintage jeans. Halfway down, I rummaged for a shirt. Halfway done, rather, I rummaged for a shirt. I found a plain UWC standard shirt that my older brother brought me. It was new, but I looked inside the collar anyway. Just like I thought, my brother had written my name inside, Zane, an old habit from when I was younger that he refused to let die. There was no way I could go wrong with jeans and a white t-shirt. I surveyed myself in the closet mirror for a few minutes, satisfied with my outfit and overall look. Breakfast is on the counter, my best friend Brandon announced as I walked in the kitchen. He was half reading a book while listening to sports highlights playing on the media wall in the entertaining room. On the counter sat 2 chocolate chip toaster pastries. He boasted, I made them myself. Really? I'm surprised you got the toaster to work this time, I teased. I took a bite. Hey now, I've been practicing. So how are they? He stared at me, looking creepy. Great, crisp to perfection, thanks. I exaggerated. No problem. He turned his full attention to the book. What time are we leaving for campus, I asked. In a few, man, chill, he said. 95% of the UWC's current population wouldn't have understood what he just said. Yeah, okay, I'll be watching the highlights until you get ready to go, nerd, I added as I walked in the other room. No need, I'm ready now. Please get your things so we can get out of here before we're late to class. No, don't try to turn this around on me, I argued, grabbing my backpack too. Just did. Yeah, whatever, I said. I continued to the entertainment room and picked up the remote sitting on a small table. Swiped my fingers across, prompting the commands to appear. I selected one with a picture of a pillow, turning the media wall to rest. After making sure I had all my belongings, I followed him out the front door.